Be a history lesson and a look ahead, as I have been doing. If I'm going to look too far ahead, I better look in the rearview mirror. And the rearview mirror will start in the San Fernando Valley. That will show you how I used to go to school in what we called the red car. It was the streetcar that made the San Fernando Valley, created it. It was the one from Long Beach, the one out to North Hollywood, Van Nuys, and beyond. It was that was the method in which the San Fernando Valley was born, which also was where suburban America was born, which will be the subject of another discussion. So the other thing that I will show here is a Pony Express station. In the old days, the train would stop at the carriage would stop at the Pony Express stations. Because that's where they had spare horses to replace the ones that were wearing out, and also a place where somebody could sit and relax and maybe have a cup of tea. So the stations were created then. The distance between the stations were how far the horse could run without wearing out. That same technique is used in the Middle East now. They were telling me that the marketplaces in Iran or one of the Middle Eastern countries is about 30 miles apart, because that's the distance a camel can go. And so always there's been some rationale for a train stop. It would be a port, it would be a crossroads, it would be a natural feature. And in the red car in the San Fernando Valley, that car would stop if it saw a cluster of people standing next to the train. And so that would be the rationale for the stop of the train. Then I got to the Midwest, and I would take trains, and they would stop periodically to pick up milk, because they would see a pickup truck against the tracks with the cans of milk in the back. And so that would be one thing that would do it. Then the other thing you would see stopping the train is mail. And so we had mail runs and milk runs. And we also had expresses, which I will talk about some other time. So anyway, what is the rationale for a rail station or any kind of a station? It should be some logic. And if I will go into Arlington County, and here's what I think I know I saw is I saw that the metro was being extended along the same routes that the streetcar and buses would take, which is where the immigrants were following to open up the Vietnamese stores and restaurants and whatever else they had out in that corridor. And the parallel to that is I-66. And so I'm wondering here, I wonder what the correlation between those two are. Well, you see, I knew that there were a lot of people that were living in outside the Beltway, outside of D.C., who were living in the Broyhill Homes Estates and others. They would work in D.C. and live elsewhere, so origins and destinations were separate. And so the federal government was concerned about the lack of employees where they had the jobs. And so they looked at 66. Let's see, would 66 do it for us? That was during the era when interstate highways were being built as alternative airstrips for in case there was a defense problem, which is an Eisenhower idea. So that 66 was the answer that I think the government came up with. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the people in Arlington County said, no, we don't want 66 to be that wide. So they closed it down. They wouldn't allow, they fought the right-of-way extension, and so it was a narrow road, and so the narrow road is not doing the job. So the following thing I saw was the metro coming out, and it started at the courthouse, and then continued on to Ballston. And I thought Ballston was going to be a wonderful stop, and I did some work down there for a private developer, and I said, well, okay, I see where the station's going to be. Now why don't we hook up the lobbies of each of the buildings that we're dealing with there. I started with the one on Quincy Street, and if you go from there to there to there to there to there, you could go through the lobbies to get to the metro stop. They didn't do that. And so when I first went back to look at Boston after one of my students became involved there in the partnership, the Boston Partnership, He said, "There's no retail in this area." I said, "You know why? There's nobody living at the retail level. They live above and look down. So if they would have had townhouses and loft apartments through there, they would have been able to have a much more active street